The mother of Joe Ramirez is now responding to the verdict following the trial of Caysen Allison. A jury found Allison guilty of criminally negligent homicide. He was originally charged with murder after he stabbed Ramirez to death during a fight in a Belton High School bathroom. Ramirez's mother posted to social media this afternoon, sharing her disbelief and grief. Her statement reads in part, "They completely broke me. I can't figure out how 12 jurors came to the decision they did. We all sat in that courtroom and listened to the same things." Allison will return to court June 16th for sentencing. He's facing 6 to 24 months in state jail.
If you've never heard about the Caysen Allison and Jose Ramirez case, then the question you should be asking yourself is, why? Why was Carmelo Anthony front page news on every outlet while Caysen Allison flew under the radar and was barely talked about? Now, if you want to be gaslit and told you're not seeing what you're seeing, then be my guest. But anybody with an IQ above room temperature can clearly see that Caysen Allison has the complexion for the protection, while the biggest crime Carmelo Anthony committed wasn't the stabbing where Austin Metcalf tragically lost his life, but it's being a young black man in a system that wasn't designed for us.
They say that Carmelo Anthony and Austin, this is not about race. Then how come we never heard about Caysen Allison and Jose Ramirez? You have a white teenager who deleted a Mexican teenager right there in Texas. This happened maybe a year or 2 years before the Carmelo incident, right? And this kid, he brought a knife, his daddy's knife, to his high school with the intentions of using that knife, and he used it on Jose Ramirez. They had a fight in the bathroom. He did not stab Jose once. He did not stab him twice. He did not stab him 3 times. He stabbed him 4 times. He had the intent to stab this man, Jose, right? And you know how many years they gave him? 2 years for negligent homicide. 2 years. Then they was like, hold up, we're going to give you a weapons enhancement charge, which brought it up to 10 years. And his lawyers are fighting this right now. They're like, no, we're not going to do this 10 years. And he's on, I want to say he's 18, 19, so he'll get out before he's 30, right? Whereas you had Carmelo Anthony, yeah, he had a knife on him, but he didn't know he was going to meet Austin. That's just coincidental, right? He didn't know he was going to meet Austin. And then he, as unfortunate and tragic this event is, he only stabbed him 1 time. It was like, back up off me. He didn't go to work. Like Caysen went to work 4 times. Bro, he stabbed Jose. He got it off on him. Like, until he couldn't stab him no more. He was like, okay, I'm tired. And he took off. I need the rest of my energy to run away from the police. Yeah, I think that did it. Right? Jose dead 4 times. Carmelo, 1 time. Intent, back up off me. I didn't want to kill you. This was just negligence. So if Carmelo get more than 10 years, you already know what it is. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. And once again, this wasn't all over the headlines. Caysen and Jose Ramirez wasn't all over the headlines, but for some strange reason, Carmelo is. Go figure. And it happened in Texas. Both cases is in Texas.
So you can hear the differences and similarities in the cases already. Now, the last video we're going to watch is going to be from a YouTube channel called I'm Not a Lawyer, where she really goes through step by step the similarities and the differences. But let's just break some down between us right now. So, Caysen knew the boy he went to school with. Carmelo never knew Austin. Caysen and the boy had an issue with each other. They had an issue. They had planned and set up a fight, right? The fight didn't go down the time they thought it would. It was supposed to go down at like a park or something. They decided not to do that and decided, okay, we're going to handle it at a later time. When they do get into the fight, Caysen whips out the knife, right? What does that tell you? What that tells me is, who had more premeditation? Was it Carmelo or was it Caysen? Carmelo doesn't know Austin, shows up to a track meet, and unless he's a mind reader, doesn't plan on getting into it with anybody. Meanwhile, Caysen and Jose have an actual beef and an actual issue, plan to fight, and the time that they do get into the fight, Caysen whips out a knife. Who sounds more premeditated?
I want to talk about the case of Caysen Allison because it very much mirrors the case of Karmelo Anthony. And I want to know what you all think about why there hasn't been the same uproar, the same anger, the same outrage, the same racist hatred spewed regarding this case. So let's get into it. Caysen Allison, who received a maximum sentence of 10 years for the deadly stabbing of fellow Belton High School student Joe Ramirez. Belton.
But remember, he didn't get 10 years for the actual schmurder. He only got 2 years for the actual schmurder. The judge came back and used the weapon, upgraded the weapon to a deadly weapon. That added the extra 8. So he didn't get 10 years for the actual unaliving. He only got 2 for that. What bumped it up was the use of the deadly weapon.
High school is in Central Texas. This incident took place in May of 2022. However, the sentencing occurred in 2025. Similarly, in this case, as in the Karmelo Anthony case, Caysen Allison had a knife on school grounds. Caysen Allison, by the way, is Caucasian. Caysen was 18 years old at the time, so he was an adult. He was even older than Karmelo Anthony. Apparently, there was a fight scheduled to take place, but it was supposed to happen off of school grounds between Caysen and Joe Ramirez. Caysen was heard to say that he wanted Ramirez, quote, on life support, unquote. So I think it's pretty fair to say premeditation came into play. The fight ended up taking place in the school restroom. Afterwards, Allison fled the scene of the crime. He was later apprehended and taken into custody. Their beef started on prom night, where they had a heated argument at a after party after the prom. In a text message, Allison texted his friend Chris Biddle, "Bro, bring me a gun." The stabbing, in which Allison stabbed Ramirez fatally 4 times, like I said, was premeditated. So Allison had a knife. It was on school property. He had the intent that he had previously expressed quite a while back that he wanted to hurt or kill Ramirez, okay? And in this fight in the bathroom, Ramirez allegedly hit Allison first, but eerily similarly, Allison had a knife on him and answered the punch with 1, 2, 3, 4 stabs.
That's a great point. Because what do we keep hearing? We keep hearing Karmelo shouldn't have met a shove with a poke, right? This kid, in this case, Caysen Allison, meets Jose's punch by slashing away. Is that excessive? Is that an excessive response? Because we keep hearing Karmelo's response was excessive. He shouldn't have pushed him. He should have just used his fist. Does this apply for Caysen? Or the same rules don't apply?
To Ramirez. Allison was only sentenced to 10 years, which, by the way, he's appealing those 10. Where is the outrage? Where's the national publicity? Where? Nowhere. Because Ramirez was Latino and Allison was white. And we know that a Latino life, an Asian life, a Native American life, a Black life, all of those lives do not equal one white life. His life was not considered as valuable as Allison's due to his race. 2 different cases in Texas, 2 vastly different outcomes. Hypocrisy. Case closed. Karmelo committed a crime, but make no mistake, the worst part of the crime that Karmelo Anthony committed was being Black. Because here's a case, same state. Premeditation, not even something to be argued. 10 years. 10 years for taking the life of that child. There weren't protests and racial slurs being thrown or anything else. There was just a lot of support for Caysen Allison. I remember the case very well. Very well. So, clock in, what do you think?
So what are we seeing so far from both of these cases? Both of them in Texas, right? Caysen Allison, way more premeditated than Karmelo's. Caysen Allison, the violence was way more excessive as he stabbed the guy 4 times, while Karmelo only poked once. And then what else did we see? The media coverage was way different. In the Karmelo case, he's all over the media being painted as a monster. The Caysen Allison case, we don't even hear about it.
A lot of people have been commenting and DMing me this picture, which compares the verdict and sentence for Karmelo Anthony versus the verdict and sentencing for another man whose name is Caysen Allison. And I'm not a lawyer, but I decided to do a little digging to see what the actual similarities and what the actual differences are between these two cases. So let me tell y'all what I found. So first, let me fill you in on Caysen's actual case. So back on May 3rd, 2022, Caysen Allison, who was 18 at the time, was a senior at Belton High School in Texas. It was a Tuesday morning, and around 9:47 a.m., him and another friend of his walk into the boys' bathroom at the school, and by the time...
And I'm going to just say this, if you know, you know. He look a little crazy. he got that look in your eye.
Caysen left, he had stabbed his 17-year-old classmate, Joe Ramirez. Now, context as to what led up to the stabbing is that prom was 4 days earlier. And while the two of them were at a prom after party, they got into it because Joe felt like Caysen was being aggressive toward the prom date of one of Joe's friends. So they had this verbal altercation, and Caysen claims that Joe pulled a gun on him during this altercation. But it's worth noting that a friend testified at the trial that it wasn't Joe, it was someone else.
A friend of Allison shared today that he saw someone pull a gun on Allison at the prom after party, but it was not Ramirez.
So the two of them have this argument, and afterward, a Snapchat group message is created where Caysen suggests that the two of them should fight at a park. Joe apparently says he's not really down for the park, so the two of them plan to fight at the school, but they never lock down a time and a place. Now, before the day of the fight, multiple of Joe's friends testified that he told them he planned to seriously injure Joe.
Another close friend of Allison returned to the stand today discussing text messages between the two of them, and those texts contained things like Allison saying, "Bro, bring me a gun." Quote, "He wanted Joe on life support and wanted to stomp his head in."
And then when the...
Come on, did we catch that? So the Allison guy texts his friend, said he wanted Joe on life support and that he wanted to stomp his head in. Is that premeditated?
Detectives pulled Caysen's Snapchat messages. They heard a voice recording of him telling someone, quote, "We finna catch them tomorrow, and I'm going to send him to the hospital." So that all happens in between prom and Tuesday, May 3rd. And then on Tuesday, the school day starts, and after first period, Joe and 4 of his friends go to the boys' bathroom because that is apparently something they did every day. But this time, shortly after they go to the bathroom, the school cameras catch Caysen and a friend of his also walking into that same bathroom. Now, according to the testimony from the trial, this meetup was not planned, and Joe was actually surprised to see Caysen in the bathroom. Multiple witnesses who were also in the bathroom at that time testified that Caysen did not want to fight at school. He emphasized they were close to graduation and he did not want to risk that, but Joe apparently wanted to fight. In a recorded interview with detectives, Caysen says that once the boys started taking off their backpack, he took out a knife that he had brought to school with him and said, quote, "Don't touch me or I'll stab you." At this point, a student that was also in the bathroom takes out his phone and begins recording the altercation. And on that video, he captures Joe swing on Caysen. Caysen lunge and stab Joe. Then there's a scream and the video cuts. Now, following this incident, Caysen is caught on the cameras running out of the bathroom. He ends up making it all the way to his house. But because multiple students were witnesses, they were able to tell police and officials that Caysen was the one who did this. So law enforcement arrives at Caysen's house within the hour, and they find him in his bathroom, on the phone telling someone he, quote, did something at school and asking them to take him to Waco, Texas, another city. Police search Caysen's house and they find the knife that he used. And although Caysen told them he only stabbed Joe one time, the medical examiner testified on the stand that Joe was actually stabbed 4 times.
We learned there was one large stab wound across Ramirez's chest, which caused multiple injuries to both the heart itself and the left lung, as well as 2 stab wounds on his buttocks and a wound on his upper back and left forearm.
Who is the real Lord Michaels?
Live from New York. It's Saturday night.
He's given us all these amazing...
So following this, Caysen was charged with murder. But during the trial, the jurors were given the option to convict him of murder, manslaughter, or criminally negligent homicide. And his jury chose criminally negligent homicide, which...
So they didn't even give him manslaughter. They had 3 different options. They didn't even give him the one in the middle. They gave him the lowest charge possible.
In layman's terms means you've committed some kind of negligent act that you didn't realize would end up killing somebody. And so, for this conviction, Caysen was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, for the sake of full context, there was some testimony that Joe and his friends were known to get in fights and apparently known to jump people. Okay, so that's the background. Now let's do a quick run through of some of the similarities and some of the differences. First up, there's a clear difference in the history each of these defendants and their victims had with each other. Caysen and Joe obviously went to school together and had some hostility with each other, even if only for 4 days. Karmelo and Austin Metcalf, on the other hand, had no history. They didn't go to school together and they did not know each other before that day. Next, let's talk about the planning aspect. So it's clear from the Snapchat messages that Caysen and Joe were planning to fight. In fact, according to what was presented, Caysen was the one who first suggested a location for the 2 of them to fight. And he communicated to multiple people that he planned on seriously injuring Joe through this fight. As far as planning on Karmelo's hand, there was no evidence presented in his trial that there were any communications or planning involved indicating that he was looking for this fight. Now, they both did have knives on them on the day of the incident that they brought to school grounds, but based on the evidence that was presented, Caysen communicated his intention on using that knife, and there was no evidence presented that showed Karmelo communicated his intent with the knife. Okay, next, let's talk about the threat or warning that both of the defendants gave to their victims. Caysen told detectives in his recorded interview that he told Joe prior to stabbing him, quote, "Don't touch me or I'm going to stab you." And that has a lot of similarity to what Karmelo told Austin before he stabbed him, which was, quote, "Touch me and see what happens." Okay, now let's talk about level of force. In Caysen's case, there was video evidence that showed Joe punched him. And during the trial, there was testimony that that punch resulted in Caysen having a closed head injury. And there was also claim from people on the witness stand that when they were all in the bathroom, Joe and his friends locked the bathroom door to prevent Caysen and his friend from leaving. But that claim was never proven. It was just something somebody said on the stand. Now, in Karmelo's case, on the other hand, there was never any consistent testimony about how hard Austin touched Karmelo before Karmelo stabbed him. Someone said it was a push. Someone said it was a 2-handed push. Other people said it was a shove. And one person even said it was a lineman move. So the one thing that is for certain is that it wasn't a punch. But the one thing that's similar between the 2 cases is that the victims in both cases committed the first assault or unlawful touch. Next, let's talk about what happened after the stabbings. So in Caysen's case, he left the school premises, went to his house, and officers caught him on the phone trying to get a ride out of the city. Karmelo, on the other hand, did leave the tent where this incident happened, but he was stopped by a coach where he remained on scene until police came. Okay, and now the last comparison I've noted has to do with the verdict. So in both cases, jurors had the option to convict the defendants of murder or manslaughter. But in Caysen's case, they were also given the option of this criminal negligent homicide. Karmelo's attorney did ask the judge for this option, but the prosecutors argued that that should not be an option for the jury because there isn't, quote, any evidence in the record that the defendant was unaware that his actions could lead to death. And after hearing that argument, the judge sided with the prosecutor, and so this option was not given as a lesser included charge to the jury. So, since both of these cases happened in Texas, the defendants were given the option to have the judge issue their sentence or the jury issue their sentence. In Caysen's case, he chose the judge, who ended up sentencing him to the maximum allowed for criminal negligent homicide, which is 10 years. Karmelo, on the other hand, chose the jury to issue his sentence, and they sentenced him to 35 years, where the max was 99. Okay, so that's my comparative analysis, and I'm curious what you think about the similarities and the differences between these two cases. So do you feel like it's a fair comparison or not?
Man, look, both of these cases are tragic. But as Black Americans, all we want to know is, are we living in a two-tiered justice system? Or is everybody walking into these courtrooms on equal ground? Because it feels like too often, when we look at cases like this that are similar to each other, one person's getting the benefit of the doubt and the other person isn't. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'm out.